Fortunately, that was not on the video. There you go. So here's just some basic writing tips. Read the instructions. I know that that's obvious, but it's also obvious when you haven't done that. So read the paper instructions, requirements, and rubric. Then read them again before turning in your paper. Because, if you missed points like you didn't address this, and I circle them on the rubric, right, the ones that are problematic, just making sure, just going over your paper, okay, I got an introduction, I got a conclusion, I got a paragraph on this, I've got a paragraph on this, it will save you. I mean, those are easy points. Just like a bibliography is easy points. And you don't have to be a great writer to include everything that the paper asks of you. So students lose points simply from not following instructions. Always, always, always proofread your papers. I can tell who has proofread well and who has not, because even if you just read it aloud to yourself, which I think is, you catch a lot of those awkward sentences. Like if you read it aloud and you're like, what does that mean? You wrote it, and if you aren't sure what it means, or if you realize, oh, that's not saying what I wanted to say, that's the time to change it. You'll catch run-on sentences because you'll just keep going on, and it's like, oh, I need a period in there somewhere, or a semicolon or something. So yeah, or have a friend proofread. I have one student ask me to proofread his paper. Now, I can't do that for all 33 of you in this class, but have someone proofread it, and that is not cheating. Now, having a parent write it for you, having a parent edit it, that like literally edit it, like make it better, would be, but just having another set of eyes go, yeah, you might want to check this out, or is not cheating. When you get to that 4-year college, every 4-year college I know of has students that they pay their work study is proofreading people's papers, and if you get it done in time, that's the key thing, right? So you have to have it completed 2 or 3 days before it's due. They will read it, and they will give you suggestions on how to do it. So that's not cheating. So make use of that. Have a thesaurus handy. Instead of using got, find a word like procured. Instead of using good, try superior. Instead of writing he liked to argue with people, write he was disputatious. By the way, that's how that became the word of the week, because Caitlin Severson put the word disputatious in her paper, and I thought, that's a really cool word. I've never heard that word before. It's going to be the word of the week. I'm pretty sure you didn't know the word disputatious when you sat down to write, but you thought, I want to find a better word for that, and you used a thesaurus. That'll get you, first of all, it'll get you a smiley face and a great word, and a number of you got a smiley face and a great word on your paper, me writing it. That will impress people, and it makes your paper more interesting. He liked to argue is not nearly so interesting as he was disputatious, right? By the way, that's the first time that I can remember that I had to look up a word. I don't think I've ever had to do that before. So, good job. Remember that a valid sentence must have 3 things. It must have a subject, a noun, and it must be a complete thought. Now, or a verb. You should say verb. I'm sorry. It must have a subject, a verb, and it must be a complete thought. The subject, would you correct that on there, and I'll correct it on my computer. The subject can be implied. So if I say to Jake, sit up, that's a sentence. It's also something he needs to do. What am I saying? I'm saying, Jake, sit up. You sit up. That's the subject of the sentence. How many of you have taken John Baylor? Okay, and what's his advice about making sure that what you've written is a complete sentence? What you're reading on the test, yeah. Right, yeah. If I say, Jake, sit up, then that's the complete thought. You'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I need to sit up, right? But if I just say, Jake, up, as John Baylor would say, that doesn't make sense, right? So did I do that pretty well? Yeah, I heard it a lot. By the way, the last time I had a conversation with someone from John Baylor, about half the conversation was talking about Husker volleyball and not what we were talking about. So yeah, it must be a complete thought. Remember that a subject and verb must agree in number. I saw this quite a bit. So it has to, if the subject is singular, then the verb has to be singular. So you can't say the girl like the cookie, right? Because girl is singular and like is plural. We like the cookie, or like the cookie is the girl likes the cookie. A paragraph should be at least 3 sentences long. That's at a minimum, and I would think there'd be very few paragraphs that would be that short and focused on one subject. An academic paper, and this is one that I for a lot of you, I wrote down something that says, like, write out numbers below 100 in formal writing. It's just a bunch of formal writing rules. Anything that you write at school that's a paper, maybe not something that's like in English, you're writing your own short story or something like that, that's different. But when you're writing a term paper, when you're writing about something factual, that's considered formal writing. So an academic paper is considered formal writing, therefore no abbreviations should be used. No contractions should be used. And all numbers under 100 should be written out. So you write TEN instead of the number 10. Now, these are my personal abbreviations and markings on your paper, and I realized maybe they don't know what I mean when I write that down to make it easier for me to, or quicker for me to grade those papers. So if you have a fragment, I'm going to write frag on there, right? Or fragment. A fragment is a sentence, is a group of words that you've said are a sentence. It starts with a capital letter, it ends with a period, but it's actually not a sentence. It's not a complete thought. So it's not a complete sentence. It's either missing a subject and or a verb, or it's not a complete thought. So if you see frag or fragment on there, that's not a complete sentence. Run-on is the opposite. Run-on is multiple sentences slammed into one. There are ways you can do that. You can take multiple, what could be separate sentences and put them together in a way that's grammatically correct. But you have to have either a semicolon there or a conjunction with a comma. But if it just keeps going on, that's a run-on. So it'll say run-on. So it's lacking the punctuation to make it a proper sentence. If I put the word awkward on there, it means that sentence or those sentences are worded awkwardly. And I often, when I do that, write an alternative sentence. I make it unawkward. Right? Unawkward's not a word. By kind of showing you how to do that. Redundant means that what you have written is repetitive. You've repeated something. SP is the word is misspelled. WW means you've used the wrong word. The example I gave there is you wrote TO to when you meant TOO. So that was too much, and you write TO. A means, excuse me, shoot. I meant to fix this before I forgot. If I put 3, so what? Rule number 1, and I messed it up. Good point. So let's say it's this, and it shouldn't be capitalized. I put a slash through it. So put a slash through that A. And let's say it's a word that should be capitalized, and you didn't capitalize it. I put 3 lines below. But I didn't, by the way, these are not my markings. These are sort of general English teacher markings. I don't know if that's what Mrs. Dennis does, but Mrs. Benson does, but they're general. I don't even know what I do with that. I probably write out next to that, would be my guess. So if I put write out, but by a number or by something that should be written out, like a contraction, it just means it should be written out. And then ABBR means abbreviation. That there should be no abbreviation. Questions? Let's move forward and turn in your books. I think page 198-ish. I think we were on page 200, but I'm going to back up because we left off at kind of an awkward place. So if you would please. On page 199, this last point. Everybody see that on toward the bottom of page second to last paragraph on page 199. We'll start there. This last point about Mormonism raises a question, namely, why does the existence of a theistic God disprove polytheism? It disproves polytheism because God is infinite, and there cannot be more than one infinite being. To distinguish one being from another, they must differ in some way. If they differ in some way, then one lacks something that the other one has. If one being lacks something that the other one has, if one being lacks something that the other one has, then a lacking being is not infinite, because an infinite being, by definition, lacks nothing. So there can be only one infinite being. Now, one could argue that finite beings, or gods, exist that are more powerful than human beings. In fact, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all teach the existence of angels and demons. But that's not polytheism, which denies that there is a supreme, infinite, eternal being to whom all creatures owe their existence and to whom all creatures are ultimately accountable. Since theism is true, polytheism is just as false as atheism, pantheism, and all the other non-theistic worldviews. But we digress. The main point is that the right box top for the universe shows a theistic God. That means that only one of the 3 major theistic world religions can make the cut of truth, either Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. Now, logically, all of these theistic world religions cannot be true because they make mutually exclusive claims. Moreover, it could be that none of these world religions is completely true. Maybe they have theism right, but little else. That's possible. However, since we know beyond a reasonable doubt that God exists and that he has the characteristics we've listed above, characteristics that include design, purpose, justice, and love, then we should expect him to reveal more of himself and his purpose for our lives. This would require that he communicate with us. One of the 3 major theistic religions is likely to contain that communication. How does God communicate? As we have seen, God has already communicated to us through creation and conscience, natural or general revelation, which gives us basic ideas about his existence, power, and moral requirements. But how could God reveal himself so that we could get a more detailed understanding of what his ultimate purpose is for us? Why couldn't he appear to each one of us? He could, but that might interfere with our free will. C.S. Lewis has some great insights on this topic. In his Screwtape letters, Screwtape, the senior demon, writes to the following to Wormwood. You must have wondered why the enemy, God, does not make more use of his power to be sensibly present to human souls in any degree he chooses and at any moment. But you now see the irresistible and the indisputable are the two weapons which the very nature of his scheme forbids him to use. Merely to override a human will as his felt presence in any but the faintest and most mitigated degree would certainly do. Would be for him useless. He cannot ravish. He can only woo. If God has not chosen the overpowering option of face-to-face interactions with every person on the planet, then perhaps he has chosen a more subtle method of communication. In fact, the Bible says God is not always as overt as we would like him to be. Perhaps God has manifested himself in some way to a select group of people over many centuries and inspired them to write down what they witnessed and heard from him. Written language is a precise medium of communication that can easily be duplicated and passed on to succeeding generations. Yet it also can be easily ignored by those who freely decide that they don't want to be bothered with God. So a book would work as a valid but not overpowering means of communication from God. But whose book? Has God communicated through the book of the Jews, the book of the Christians, or the book of the Muslims? How are we supposed to tell whose book, if any, is the real message from God? So we're going to stop there, and then we're going to go to our little atheist book, to page 58. The chapter is called Miracles, Signs of God or Gullibility. The main idea is that as we continue to build the case for God, this chapter argues for miracles and defines their purpose and role in the world. And then some of the terms that you will need to know are general revelation, special revelation, miracle, anomalies, magic, psychosomatic, satanic signs, and providence. So here are the points being made. If God exists, then miracles are possible. Miracles can be used to confirm a message from God. So you are going to complete the Embolden questions 1 through 3. Actually, let's do those together as a class. And then we'll... what do we know about God from the cosmological argument? He's self-existent. What else do we know? He's unimaginably powerful and personal. We'll stop there first. He's self-existent, unimaginably powerful, and personal. What else do we know about God from the cosmological argument? He's timeless. What else? Non-spatial. That doesn't mean he's not special. That means that he exists outside of space and time. He's infinite, so he's without limits. What else? He's immaterial. He doesn't have flesh and blood. He's spirit. That about covers. What do we know about God from the teleological argument, the argument from design? He's supremely intelligent. He's purposeful. Anything else? So we know that he's supremely intelligent because he created and designed both the universe and everything living in the universe with great precision. What do we know about God from the moral argument?
Absolutely.
He's absolutely morally pure. And we know that because he is the standard on which we define or derive morality. He is the moral standard. He himself is the moral standard. And that's not the standard that we tend to use when we judge ourselves. We tend to use a standard, a human standard. We tend to use, and not just a human standard. Like we don't use Mother Teresa as our human standard. We use Hitler, right? We use one that's worse than we are, so hopefully, so that we look good. But God is the standard of morality. Only perfection can be the standard of morality. And that is who God is. Any questions on it? Okay, well, I have some good news for you. That's all we needed to do today.